simply put, we believe that this proposal is bad for the people of Maine, bad for Massachusetts, bad for our economies and our environment. Specifically, Central Maine Power's proposed transmission line would cut a brand new 53-mile corridor across Maine's western mountains. It would harm forests, streams, wildlands, wildlife, scenic beauty, and it would bisect the largest unfragmented forest east of the Mississippi. Based on our research, we also believe that it would suppress the development of clean, renewable energy like wind and solar in Maine, which we believe would provide greater economic and environmental benefits to both Maine and Massachusetts. We also believe that not only will it have an on-the-ground impact and harm Maine's renewable energy industry, but that it will also fail to reduce climate change emissions and could actually result in an increase in climate change emissions. Everybody, I think, knows the background of this proposal, that it will build a 145-mile high-voltage direct current line from Quebec at the Maine border to an interconnection with New England grid in Lewiston. But just a couple of notes about the numbers of the impact. Not only will it cut through our North Woods, there would be an above-ground crossing at the Kennebec River Gorge. There are many people who've already spoken and people who will speak later about the specific impact that crossing would have, but that's incredibly important for the people of Maine. It's a world-renowned whitewater rafting and fishing destination. The remaining 92 miles where there already is a transmission line would require additional clearing and vegetation removal. It would cross our Appalachian Trail, 263 wetland crossings, 115 stream crossings, 12 inland waterfowl and wading bird habitats, and many other site impacts. And while we agree with the other nonprofit groups that have submitted testimony, Maine's natural resources agencies, and the members of the public that are here today, that CMP's proposed mitigation is wildly inadequate, given the scale of the adverse impacts that are likely to occur. Our greatest concern is that this whole project and all of the resulting environmental and social and economic harms that are associated with CMP's chosen route will just not have any benefit to the climate, which is the goal here. And we agree with that goal. It's just that we don't think that this is the way to achieve it. And that it could actually result in an increase in dangerous greenhouse gas emissions. Despite repeated attempts, opportunities and requests to do so, both informally and in an adjudicatory setting at the Maine Public Utilities Commission, CMP has failed to demonstrate that this project will have any real or quantifiable climate benefits. They can demonstrate what will happen to emissions in New England, but I'm talking about global climate emissions. No new hydroelectric facilities are being constructed or modified specifically to supply energy to New England through this line. Instead, CMP is using an accounting trick to argue that it will provide clean energy just to New England. And that's the end of the analysis. However, bringing Quebec energy into New England through the NECEC is likely to require shifting existing sales from the New York and Ontario markets to supply New England. The shift from New York and Ontario to New England could result in no emissions benefits, just a wash, or it could cause an increase depending on what the fuel mix is used to replace the energy. Furthermore, just last week, CMP admitted at the Maine Public Utilities Commission that depending on financial incentives, there's nothing preventing Hydro-Quebec from buying low-cost but high-carbon energy from other markets to supply its domestic load while selling its hydroelectricity to New England and other regions willing to pay above market rates for this so-called clean energy. As we all know, greenhouse gas emissions do not follow geographic boundaries. So shifting emissions from one geographic region to another is not going to help us against climate change and could place an economic and environmental burden on New England ratepayers for no real benefit. Our concerns are not speculative. There's been analysis by experts in both the Maine Public Utilities Commission and the New Hampshire bodies in their evaluation of the Northern Pass project, which was very similar to this. which have repeatedly identified the lack of any clear evidence that the project will result in any new reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Hydro-Quebec has failed to appear as a party in any proceeding in order to hide behind these simplistic, unverifiable claims about generation and greenhouse gases put forward by CMP. The Natural Resources Council of Maine is also concerned that this proposal could create congestion on our electricity system, which would crowd out in-state renewable energy, including wind and solar. For example, testimony from William Fowler at Maine's Public Utilities Commission indicates that, and this is a quote from his testimony, that the NECEC would indefinitely block the ability of future renewables and other generation north of the Sarawak transmission interface from participating in New England's capacity markets. If our goal is to address climate change through a variety of renewable energy resources, choosing a project that is highly certain to prevent new, verifiable, and New England-produced renewable energy from reaching the market does not make sense. Massachusetts has established itself as a national leader in confronting climate change and accelerating clean energy technologies. It would be unconscionable for Massachusetts to fail to fully explore and account for the real additional climate impacts of this contract. That is especially true given the billions of dollars of ratepayer money that are on the line. CMP can try to win over public opinion with the public relations campaigns and online videos touting clean energy, but regulators should not be fooled. In addition to the testimony and the supporting documents that I'm submitting today, I have also brought a petition that was signed by, as of this last Friday when we took it off our website, 2,634 citizens. Most of those are from Maine and Massachusetts, opposing CMP's proposed transmission line because the proposal will be bad for the people of Maine and Massachusetts and our economy and our environments. These individuals and many organizations are increasingly expressing alarm at this project, which CMP has tried to steamroll through Maine communities. Also included in my testimony is a letter from a select board member in Starks, which is a small town in Maine, who reacted with shock to learn that a CMP drafted letter of support was sent on behalf of the town of Starks without the knowledge of himself, a select board member. The more Maine people and communities learn about this project, the more skeptical and concerned they are becoming. CMP is betting on state agencies in both of our states to act quickly before the trail of undisclosed impacts and unanswered questions catches up to them. We urge the department to not fall victim to this trap. In closing, NRCM asks you to please reject these contracts related to CMP's New England Clean Energy Connect proposal. The cost to both Massachusetts and Maine, and to our people and to our environment are too great. Maine and Massachusetts deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Clifford Stevens. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the statement you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Please spell your first and last name, please, stenographer, and let us know your affiliation.
Clifford, C-L-I-F-F-O-R-D, Stevens, S-T-E-V-E-N-S. I'm Clifford Stevens, and I've been a resident of the Forks for 40 years. That's right, resident of the Forks for 40 years. I raised my family there. I also own 2 businesses in the area, one of which is a sporting camp that abuts the project. The other is a rafting company that operates on the Kennebec and Dead Rivers. My sporting camps are on Lake Moxie, and it's a peaceful place. There's no internet service there. There's no cell phone service on the lake. There's only electricity on about 10% of it. The project being built there, the impact of the construction, the noise, the dust, giant towers being brought down our road would have a direct impact on my business. With guests, you know, they're not going to stay there. It's a place where people come to drop out. They can't get on the phone. They can't get on the internet. It's a quiet place, and to have construction vehicles going up and down that road, they're not going to stay. They might stay for a day, then they're going to leave. They're not going to come back. It's a very competitive market the outdoor recreation industry in the Forks, and you lose something, it's gone. People don't stick around like they used to. Let's see here. My other business that I have is a rafting operation on the Kennebec River, and I have a lunch site down there. It's on an island, and we've been feeding people there for 25 years. And the way the river goes is all the excitement's in the beginning. So people really don't get a chance to digest the beauty of that gorge or the beauty of the area. So as they go down the river and it slows down, we stop and have lunch. And right where the lunch is where the power lines are going to cross. It's one of the most beautiful spots on the river. It's still in the gorge, it opens up. So they sit there and they look around and they relax and they see this beauty of this section of the river that they haven't been able to really see when they're just trying to get down through the rapids. So now they're going to be looking at the transmission lines going across there. And it's just going to kind of take them away from where they are and take them away from the reasons they come there, which is to see the beauty of Maine's wilderness. You know, people come to enjoy the peace and beauty of Maine's wilderness. The corridor will have a visually splintering effect on this relatively undeveloped area, and it goes well beyond this crossing of the river or the power lines running by my camps on Lake Moxie. It includes countless mountains, streams, remote ponds, places people go. You know, people have not been made aware of this project, and I just was made aware of it. And people are representing businesses in the area as supporting it. And if you talk to most of the outdoor outfitters and businesses, they're very uneducated about it, and they aren't supporting it. But a lot of people who will never be reached, who use this area, this vast area, to just hike, to drive, to go camping with their families, they're not getting this information, and they have no idea that this is going to happen. So, I'm sorry, here I lost my train of thought. So these power lines and these towers will be viewed from all over the place. The Appalachian Trail, the Scenic Byway, all these little mountains that aren't like big attractions, but there's still people hike them all the time. Fishermen, hunters, families that, you know, they don't have always the ability to pay $20 to go to a campsite. And there's a lot of free places they can go. Now they'll be right in the middle of, not the wilderness, but this big swath of power lines and this giant easement here. Landscapes that have very little human development and major industrial infrastructure are becoming rare, and this project has proposed cuts into the heart of one of these such areas. Maine is not a huge wilderness area like Montana, Alaska, or Canada. We are ranked 39th in land mass in the United States. Massachusetts is 44th. Comparatively speaking, Maine is not a huge wilderness area at all, but it is a unique and special place. Once this is dissected and carved up, it is gone forever, and we'll never get it back. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Ed Buzzle. Do you swear that the statement you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Please spell your first and last name for the stenographer and let us know your affiliation.
Edwin, E-D-W-I-N, Buzzell, B-U-Z-Z-E-L-L.
Thank you.
My name is Ed Buzzell, and I've been an avid outdoorsman and guide from Maine for 45 years. I've had the privilege of guiding many people on trips through Maine's Kennebec Gorge, and I've also had the privilege to guide people to the pristine areas this transmission line will travel. This area is a wilderness. It's 250,000 acres with no tar road. Most of the people I guided down were from Massachusetts. One group I took down the Kennebec Gorge was not. There were a family of 6 from Austria. They flew in their own plane to specifically take a whitewater rafting trip. I know this because they invited their pilot to come with them on the trip. I remember this trip a lot more than a lot of others because they actually yodeled while they were in the lower board. The yodeling was like a song that they sang from one family member to another. And it was very beautiful. They had evidently practiced it before. The song echoed from both sides of the river, and they took turns singing for a long distance on the river. And they remarked to me when the trip was done that they knew no other river they'd ever been on that they were able to do that with no human intervention. I'm sure they went back to Austria and they spoke very highly of the trip. These kinds of people bring tourism to the area by the most powerful tools, word of mouth. This is the lower Kennebec Gorge that CNP wants to desecrate with a transmission line. I can't imagine having the same experience passing under a huge transmission line with big orange balls on it. When I started these trips, I always felt these areas belonged to Maine. When I finished the trips, they belonged to the people I shared them with. I don't care what country they came from. Building a transmission corridor 53 miles long, as wide as a 30-lane highway across these same pristine mountainous areas will not only damage the ecology, wildlife, fisheries, and the aesthetics of Maine, but for the people of the world as well. This transmission line will cross the Old Canada Road National Scenic Byway and be visible in the mountains beside the byway. It's hard for me to imagine that after a visitor to the area sees this, that they'll recommend to their friends to travel the Old Canada Road. They'll see more of the same old transmission lines that they travel to Maine to avoid. This will severely impact tourism and our way of life. This will be a forever clear cut, 20 times the width of this Great Wall of China, 53 miles long, with tons and tons of herbicide sprayed on it to keep it that way. This will be a scar viewed from space that will never heal. This once quiet, peaceful place will be ruined for all future generations. The aesthetics of the entire area will change, and visitors will not want to come here. Please reconsider the New England Clean Energy Connect bid to build this transmission line. This mountainous area from Canada to the Forks is one of our last undeveloped areas in the lower 48 states. This area needs to be preserved for future generations. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Nancy Soul? Stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the statement you're about to give is the truth? Thank you. Please spell your first and last name, stenographer, and let us know your affiliation.
Nancy, Nancy, Soul, Soule, and I am a registered Maine guide specializing. Registered Maine guide specializing in whitewater. I've been working in the whitewater rafting industry up in Maine for 33 years. It's how I make my money in the summertime from April to October. I want to say a little bit about what's going to happen with the water. Maine's led the country since the 1970s. We helped institute the Clean Water Act. We've worked really, really hard to clean up our rivers and streams. And a lot of people don't understand that when you go into the woods, you'll see a little rivulet that becomes a brook, that becomes a stream, that ends up in a pond, that goes into a river. What you're going to do if this line crosses through those woods is impact those waterways, and it's going to have an effect all the way down to the lakes and the rivers where we work. I represent a lot of guys who couldn't be here today because they are working. There's going to be a huge cost and an impact to Maine itself. The Massachusetts Global Warming Solutions Act is a wonderful thing. We applaud it, but we think that you're missing something. By making yourselves green, you should not be impacting your neighbors and turning us brown. You're gonna have an impact on the waterways, you're gonna have an impact on the wildlife, you're gonna have an impact on the fisheries, you're gonna have an impact on the landscape. CMP is gonna tell you that it's not a pristine landscape, and it's not. There's a lot of places where there's logging going on right now, but logging grows back after it's been cleared. Once you cut down the trees and put these power lines up, they're gonna be using herbicides to keep the growth down under that 53-mile corridor of land. And when it rains, all that herbicide is gonna go someplace, and it's not just gonna disappear, which means it's gonna go into the little rivulets that go into brooks, that go into streams, all the way down to the lakes and the rivers. They're gonna tell you that the Kennebec Gorge is not pristine, and they're right about that because the Harris Dam sits at the head of the Kennebec Gorge. But below the Harris Dam, all the way down to the town of West Forks, Maine, there is no development, there are no homes, there are no power lines, there is nothing there except river, granite walls, and beautiful woods. People come from all over the world to go rafting in Maine. We have some of the most spectacular whitewater on the East Coast. To have it affected by this power line and by this corridor is going to have a lasting impact on our business. People just aren't going to come if this is what they see when they get there. We're asking you to consider what we're telling you here. We've come a long way to tell you what we had to say and to find another way. Don't make us brown so that you can be green, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Haynes? Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the statement you're about to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please spell your first and last name for the stenographer.
Robert, R-O-B-E-R-T, Haynes, H-A-Y, Haynes.
And let us know your affiliation, please.
Well, I'm an abutter to the project. I'm a forester, working in the region, and I also happen to be the coordinator for the Old Canada Road Scenic Byway. I will not make any reference to byway comments, as I'm speaking for the day, but as a forester, and a concerned citizen. Dear Commissioners, I'm a consulting forester working for 30 years in the region of Maine, planned to be bisected by the proposed 53-mile utility plant in northern Quebec. I have serious concerns over the ultimate utility of the project to New England for a number of reasons. They include job loss in all of New England, suppression of new renewable electric projects, supply security, environmental damage in both countries, grounded ethical concern, scenic compromise, and lastly, the perceived fast-tracking of the project. My comments will generally focus on project land north of the Kennebec River. I thank you in advance for your time reading these pages and reconsidering the merit of this project. Scenic values. Maine tourism is propelled by scenery, whether it's on the coast or in the unbroken managed woodlands. Visitors come to see the relaxed landscape unavailable in their home areas. Most of this proposed 2,000-acre clearcut would be visible from a very popular winter and summer destination, the summit of Coburn Mountain. It would also be visible from number 5 Mountain, many miles to the west. A pretty generic name for a unique and beautiful hiking destination. The entire 300-foot width will be maintained as scrub shrub habitat, as yet unknown means. The monopole design selected by Vanguard minimizes structure size, but the height, averaging 95 feet, is a tad excessive, as Maine trees do not grow tall enough to create an outage issue. This also means the poles will be even easier to see sticking up so much higher than the surrounding vegetation. Environmental aspects are less with fewer poles as distance is longer between them, which is good. An unfortunate issue is that at Vanguard, has no control. Environmental impacts are less with fewer poles, as distance is longer between them. Which is good. An unfortunate issue is that Vanguard has no control over the view. Landowners have the right to harvest timber right to the property line, effectively exposing the full tower height for travelers along Route 201 or from any other point along the route. If the trees are not removed, then only portions of the line will be seen in summer. Then at the end of the summer, the leaves fall, unveiling the monstrous extension cord. Winter is the next busiest season in our area for ice fishing, snowmobiling, and cross-country skiing. Travel by snowmobile would never be without sight of the proposed transmission line. The permit application in Maine is for one utility line. It will occupy 150 feet of the 300-foot swath. Begging the question about the other half. Repeated questioning of CNP folks revealed that it was for another transmission line, should it be needed someday. Whether that would be for additional Hydro-Quebec power or to move energy from additional wind turbines, we do not know. What we do know is that once approved, the parallel line becomes quite easy. So in essence, we're approving the entire corridor. Jobs in New England. This region is powered by a number of sources from a variety of businesses and entrepreneurs. Small gas plants, biomass, solar farms, wind-generated power, as well as the traditional oil, water, and nuclear. Some older generators will be shutting down for a number of reasons, and a new source needs to replace their capacity. Buying from Canada will eliminate opportunity for U.S. business to participate in that replacement. The subsidized cost of the 1,200 megawatts will force many current generators out of the market. When those small generators are gone, I suspect we will see a price increase from this new source. I would much rather see my neighbors employed than save a nickel on my power bill. Having this 1,200 megawatt elephant in the market will stifle new clean energy generation and ensure dependence on Canada and Spain for electricity. This is total opposite of the Maine license logo, Spirit of America. And I hope those in this room will not allow those three words to be severely tarnished as fruition of this project is ensured. New England-based renewable supply. Electricity is a life necessity these days. Responsible technology has grown in the last decade that allows it to produce from a variety of clean sources. It is not always as economical as some old sources, but in the long run, considering the environmental benefit, it is cheaper. Costs of solar and wind-based renewables have come down as the volume of product has increased, and simultaneously energy-efficient appliances have allowed less consumption, balancing monthly household cost. The recent quote from the Martha's Vineyard project of wind production proves that point. The shadow from the closet, however, is weather. Hydro is constant and not dependent on wind or sun. Hydro-Quebec has stated it wants to be the battery for New England. Years ago, that was about the only option. Now emerging household batteries designed to charge at periods of low use and make grid power available in times of increased demand are on the cusp of realization. Supply security. Where is the logic in slicing through 53 miles of unfragmented forest and widening to 92 miles to import a product we can make in our own backyards? Power from Hydro-Quebec is already delivered through New York State, Maine through New Brunswick, and Vermont. One reason stands out: money. Without the success of this proposal, the Vanguard and its CMP subsidiary are out of the market. Utilities companies seem to change hands frequently. Who will own Vanguard next? The Russian entity? Environmental damage to both countries. 2/3 of the proposed project is located on existing or to be widened infrastructure. The 53 miles I spoke of is through an untracked, except for traditional uses, woodland. This scar would be 300 feet wide and goes over the sides of mountains with long, unbroken straightaways. Central Maine Power's proposed line would divide